There we go. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Talking Stick Show. So I am joined by G. Hello G, how are you doing?
Hi.
Hello.
Blessings.
Blessings. Thank you so much for
Blessings.
coming on the show. We connected in a great way through the messenger, and it was a perfect time to do this. I've been looking through all of the stuff and all of your music, and it's inspirational. So it's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to be in communication and sharing that with everybody.
Outstanding. So can you tell the listeners a bit about yourself then, a bit of your backstory and what you do for those who aren't aware?
Okay. So I'm G, and I'm originally from London, southeast London. And I like to offer myself in service in a variety of different ways, depending on what is flowing for me in that moment. So in true Sagittarius spirit, it is ever changing, and different things are taking my passion into that direction. So some of the things I really enjoy to do is to create music and to share that. I spend a lot of time in my process, and in my body as well. So a lot of the time I'm just sitting there breathing.
That's the aim of the game.
Sorry.
Whereabouts did you grow up then? Where are you now? Just to.
Okay, so yeah, I grew up in London, and I've moved around a bit, but I've always had a base that I've come back to in London, and kind of like a karmic ties constantly pulling me back, and sometimes I would not appreciate that, and sometimes I would. At the moment, I'm in Mexico, which is probably why you'll see me doing this a lot, because I'm getting bitten. um, it was quite like a spontaneous decision to come. I had planned to be in the UK for the winter. It was like, okay, hibernation. I'm going inwards. I'm gonna just create and just create from an inward process. And I actually I was feeling so conflicted, and that rarely happens to me. Usually I'm like, I did go, and so I was like, do I, don't I, and I couldn't quite decide. And the thing that helped me to decide was that I sat in ceremony, and I wrote down everything that I wanted to achieve for 2022. And every single thing I wrote, I wrote down bite-size tasks that I would need to do every week or every day in order to achieve that. And when I looked at everything, I thought to myself, I could literally be anywhere and do this stuff that I need to do. And actually, at this point, for me, I really was craving nature and warmth. And so I did. I went. And I'm here.
Outstanding. So that was kind of a spur in the moment, a bit of creation there. So whereabouts exactly are you then?
So I guess the nearest big place that I can drive to would be Tulum. I'm staying with an amazing human being, which was just was totally synchronized and accidental. As you can see, I'm in nature on the Mayan land here, and I'm staying with a local who is an amazing musician and all-round incredible being. And so even there, we are co-creating and collaborating on some musical projects, which was an added bonus to have that within my living space. So yeah, it just feels, yeah, it feels like there's so many synchronicities and alignments just coming into place now through this
So,
decision. Yeah.
so for your journey, what got you into music itself then, and onto the spiritual path? It's always interesting to hear everyone's story of how did you get onto this spiritual path. Was there any processes or rites of passage you went through? What was it like for you coming onto the journey you are on now?
Okay, so I guess I did grow up in a kind of spiritual household where things were accepted, like communion with spirit, and interpreting the universe through different, you know, palms and different kinds of things like this. So I was aware of these things. Um, Possibly wasn't the most grounded, um, you know, like situation, and so I I've always had that like belief and communion and connection, but I hadn't ever had an awakening until I was staying in Spain, in Andalusia, and I was staying in a cave, and I was alone, and so it was a complete like solitary retreat, and I was retreating from.
I'm very sorry, G. My son's just come in. Just bear with me 1 second. Sorry about that. The amount of so go ahead. Sorry, well, continue.
So I was retreating from London, which is something that I used to do a lot because I couldn't cope with London at that time, and I just had the hugest awakenings while I was there alone, you know, living in a cave, which is like, to me it felt like the womb of the earth, you know, inside the frequency of the earth that eventually like penetrated through all of my fuzzy frequencies that I came with, and just held me in such a safe place where I could rebirth. And I had no idea about any spiritual practices or anything, and I was receiving so much channeled information that was coming through, and access to Akashic records, and it was just flowing. I remember ringing my mum and being like, "Mum, there is a God. There is something. There's something happening." and and just being, yeah, and instantly knowing that ancestors were coming through and being like, okay, these ancestors are bringing this practice to me, or this technique, or this teaching, and it was just coming, and I had no reference point at that stage, and I was quite isolated. I didn't have any spiritual friends or even know that it existed, like spiritual communities. I didn't know about any practices, even though I was doing them. So yeah, that was really my introduction, and from that place I went on to discover more, and to learn more, and then I learned about the shadow process. Which like kicked my ass really. Yeah, like, and it's ongoing, but yeah.
And so what would you recommend for people who are going through an awakening, but they're kind of a bit concerned or scared in a way? I wouldn't say scared, but there's a little bit of fear within them and resistance. What would your advice would be for those people who are on the verge of the awakening, but they don't know what to do to take the next step? And this is one of the things which is hard in the world at the moment, is when to take the next step, what to do. What would you recommend in advice for people who are just coming into themselves and understanding it's hard, not, I wouldn't say harder than you think, but when you're dealing with your own shadow, you're dealing with, you think it's all love and light, then you realize that it's not, there's other parts to play, and you've got, and so on and so forth. So what would be your advice?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I love that because it is so true. At the beginning, it really does feel like, wow, it's amazing. It feels so great. And it's, it can do. And then, yeah, you're so right. The shadow stuff does come in, and it's not something that you can go back from, I don't feel. Like, you can't close that door once it's opened. You just got to keep on going and see where it takes you. But me personally, it's hard to offer advice. I don't think I've ever been up that. Just stumbling through and, and a combination of falling in style and falling flat on my face and being caught and supported in moments and crucial moments, and just when it felt like I'd reached the end, something just opens up, and it always does, when it's just like, this is it, it's all closing. And in that moment, like, when I've really just been like, okay, well, this could just be it, this could just be a life of misery and torment. Okay, I'm gonna sit with it, and then just really being with that. And then it does, for me, it has shifted. I would say to trust. Trust is a big part of it, and not comparison is the worst thing. I would say, like, because we're all at different stages, and it's not linear. So somebody may have learned really well, like, emotional intelligence at a very young age, like between the ages of 0 and 5, and they could have a really high emotional intelligence, and then they might be comparing themselves to somebody who outwardly seems like they're doing quite well, but then actually, they could be a full grown up and having to then learn emotional intelligence, which is something that maybe that person had from a young age. And so there's no, it's not linear, and comparison is literally the worst thing that we can do on this path. And it's a really hard thing to do, when it feels like we're in a difficult space.
And that's so true, the comparison there. Even my son the other day was comparing him to his brother, saying he was smarter than me. We've got that world where we grow up in, and there's always, I'd say, unhealthy competition out there. Don't get me wrong. Playing games and having that, there is healthy competition when you play a game of football or whatever, but there's that competitive, ingrained, adrenal, shadowy side to humans, which kind of, you grow up in a primary school or a secondary school, and there's always that desire to, oh, he's got that, she's got that, so on and so forth. And it's so true, G. That's one of the best ways to understand spirituality, is not comparing and making yourself known that you are an individual signature frequency, where there's no one like you, there's no one like me, there's no one like them. Everyone has an individual soul spark, and to compare is, yeah, I'd say it brings it kind of lowers our frequency, doesn't it? When you compare, you're not really actually living in your true frequency. If you were always comparing to that teacher or comparing to this teacher, it's finding yourself. And when you do find yourself, because being honest with you, GI, but the first part of my path, the first 3 years, about 10 years ago, first 2 years, I was just living, trying to be other things except myself. And I had to go through all those really, you call it the dark nights of the soul, and that process for me to really understand myself a lot more. So it's very, very true that it's so important not to do that.
Yeah, true that.
And so your journey
I'm gonna get a cover because I'm getting eaten
yeah.
alive. I'm just gonna grab one.
No problem.
Yeah, it's particularly humid today, so
Yeah.
they're all out. They're all out in force.
I went up to Scotland, but it's not too bad here. But up in Scotland in summertime, had some serious bites. So
Mm.
moving on
Yeah.
to your story then, G. So you were talking before. You were saying that you went through the awakening. There was no one really around who was doing anything. What was your next? What was the next step for you to
Okay.
go be where you are today? What was the things you did after that moment?
Okay, so I feel like there's always positives and negatives if you want to see it like that, polarity in every choice that we make. And so I feel like some real positives that came out of the process of awakening without any kind of spiritual materialism was that I developed quite a solid, well, solid, but like a foundation of myself, like my being. And and at that point I wasn't comparing. But then when I was kind of meeting other people who had done a course in spirituality or a course in shamanism or have like learned from this person or this person, I began to feel almost as though I needed to do that to be able to like validate myself in the eyes of others, because although I knew what my process was and what I had to offer, I felt like it at that point it was really hard to translate it, because also I didn't know that people channeled extraterrestrials at that point, and I was channeling extraterrestrials and I was writing everything they were telling me, and I was like, whoa, this is like some kind of sci-fi, I was like, okay, this is this is great. And I was kind of just in that process of feeling like I didn't know about the idea of, possibly other intelligent life and star seeds or anything like that. And that came a bit later. So I was more in the world of like where when I joined spirituality, it was almost like there was a lot of like spiritual consumerism and spiritual materialism, like more and all of the stuff, and I was like, oh no, I'm not. So yeah, then I did kind of like actively seek out learning some practices, and attending some courses and stuff, which was super humbling to me, because I I needed to recognize that other people had something to teach me, you know? And so that was a huge process of like of learning and unlearning. But then the positives of that were great, but then maybe the downside of that was like possibly a distancing from my own intuition and my own practice, and then like a spiritual materialism possibly. So then, yeah, so moving on from that stage, I would say that community came next for me, which is something that I'm still massively learning and leaning into and softening to. It hasn't always come very naturally to me, even though I grew up in a very big family, both sides, like really loads of people and stuff. But I would often take myself away, and so the whole community part of it, that's been a huge part of my awakening, how to be in my like authenticity and my integrity and my truth, and also be with others, be witnessed, and to witness them, and then to not like dominate a space, but to just like feel, and then like feel like the changings of it. It's such a language, and again, there are some people who are so like so good at this, like they're so good at community, and they're so good at moving in that and bringing together communities and weaving, and that's just an amazing and beautiful and highly it's just a gift. And so yeah, that came next for me. And I would say that the kind of acceptance of the contact that I receive from like higher consciousness beings, and accepting that truly in every like cell of my body as my personal truth, that has also been quite a process that I'm still on, and is something that I'm not quite sure yet what to do with that, if anything, but it is something, it is a thing.
So how did the so you talked about it came about before, kind of at the starting point of the awakening and your process. So what happened with the channeling then? Was it just you had conversations and you realized, oh, there's something else going on? What was your kind of like the knowingness of you? What kind of made you realize what you were doing?
Okay, so at the time, I did kind of feel as though I was being gifted knowledge, and I was just writing it. And it was knowledge about like kind of like how things work, in terms of like there are souls, and then there is like this, and then they come, and it was really complicated, and it was stuff that I had never even come across, and I hadn't, you know, read any sci-fi or read any content, anything like it at all. And I kind of just thought, wow, this is okay. And I left it, and you know, I sort of left it alone, and hadn't continued interacting like that, but had other interactions that were quite different, possibly like energetic channeling, less of writing but more of like imparting of wisdom or knowledge, and on like a cellular level. That's been more frequent since then, I would say.
Outstanding. And what do you find when you're doing the channeling? Because so I did it a while back, but I don't really do as much channeling as I'd like to do. What would you say from my own experience of it? It's interesting because when you're connecting, say, to a being or your higher self or whatever you're channeling, the usual person I do, or being which I travel, is my dragon. I haven't talked about this ever really on the show, but when we're talking about this, And it's interesting because when you're talking to a being in say the unseen world, you have such a different awareness, because we kind of are like, I'd say they see everything on singularity, don't they? That they're always connected. And it makes you realize how much duality we are, that we are kind of like, we're a human, but then we're connected to source. There's like loads of different parts of us. But when you kind of connecting to a being who is a celestial source or any galactic beings, you understand how there's such a difference between the dimensions or the realities. What's your experience through that? That was just something I felt like I needed to talk about, really, from my experience.
So well, it's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? I feel like really the thing that massively opened that portal up to me in a proper way was my connection with ayahuasca, and then psychedelics, really, because it gave me a language that I could then interpret everything that was coming through. It gave me like, yeah, so yeah, I mean that's a huge part of my journey, really. That was a huge part I missed out. But but that is, you know, that has been, yeah, I have connected with grandmother spirit and have received huge healings and insights. Like that was my heart activation, I would say.
And what was
The
ayahuasca like
connection
for
there,
you
that
then?
life changing, like utterly life changing. I felt like the purest form of love that I've ever felt. Um, I I was where to where to begin. It was very, it was there were other beings. Um, I was I was cared for, and I was made very clear that this is a vessel, and I made a choice in that moment to be in service.
Beautiful. And how many ceremonies did you have?
So many actually. It's possibly like quite unorthodox in the way that I did come to it. So I had, while I was in the cave, the spirit of ayahuasca came through to me, and it was something that I had heard of ages ago, but I didn't know, and it came through me through another plant medicine, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And and she kind of told me, I will we will sit together, but don't force it. And I was like, okay, cool. And like literally years went by, and I was hearing, the more I was going into my spiritual practice, I was hearing more and more about this ayahuasca, and I was like, okay, this is calling me more and more. And at this point, I was offering like energetic healings in my space and ceremonies, and so I was quite comfortable holding my own, like my space, from like in a safe way, energetically. And I met somebody who had lived in Peru with the Shipibo people for some time, and they actually had the plant that had been blessed and ceremonially prepared by them, by the Shipibo people, and they had some. And I mentioned, I said, oh yeah, something that is calling me is ayahuasca. And they said, really? Okay. And in that moment, they gifted me the fully sort of prepared medicine in a sort of condensed form, you know, that you add water to. And they told me, you know, they said, I wouldn't usually give this to anybody, but I feel as though you can work with this. And they gave me ceremonial tobacco, and they told me how to use it. And they said to sing to the medicine, and they kind of prepared me. And at that point, I was quite, I wasn't eating onions, I wasn't eating garlic, I wasn't having sex. I was basically I was almost in a dieta, almost, you know, like I was already prepared. And so I had the medicine, and then I went and sat by a river, and then the spirit came in and was like, go home. And actually I had fasted that day, just by chance. The spirit was like, go home and sit with me. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did. And I rode home on this like wave, and I got there and I like prepared the space, and I was like shaking and then like using the ceremonial tobacco. I was a bit like, I have no idea what's going to come up. At that point, I had never sat with any psychedelics due to personal reasons, which I might get into later. But I hadn't, and I had no idea what was coming. But I was just like, I trust this. And so yeah, then I sat with the medicine, and I lay down on my yoga mat, and I began to sink into a different reality. And at this point, these beings, that is hard to explain because they don't look like something, but they do. And but this healer, female grandmother spirit, it wasn't, I don't think it was the spirit of ayahuasca, but it was definitely this medicine woman spirit, came in and was healing my body and like pulling out insanity from my mind, literally like pulling insanity from my being. And I was like, ugh. And it was so consensual, because there were moments where it almost felt too much, and I was like pulling away in a way where like the whole universe is, it's so hard to explain, because it has sound, it has texture, and it's not just like I saw this thing, it's like it's so much more. And so I would pull away, and then she would be like, okay, that's fine. And then I would come back, and then she would continue working. And so this happened to me. They were like sort of preparing my physical body, like clearing away all of this stuff. And then I think I was naked, and I was I crawled up in a ball, and then the whole of the universe disappeared. I was like floating in nothingness, in the womb of the universe. There was nothing. And then my body disappeared, and I was like, oh, this is heavenly. And I was just there, curled up in this ball. I had been like sort of energetically purging. I didn't actually physically purge, but a lot of like energetic puke came out, and saliva. It was just, ugh. So I was like in this like ball of drool, and then I started to realize that my physical body was very cold, very, very cold. But I had left my body. And it was like this thing where it was like, you have to go back. I was like, no, I want to stay here forever. And then it just came like, no, like, and then I just woke up from it, and I got up, and I just like walked over like this vessel of service, like in service. I went and got the blankets and I looked after my physical body. It was such a huge realization of how to care for my body from a different perspective. And then there were like, then it moved on to different phases. It was very emotional. There was a lot of crying, a lot of laughing, a lot of deep realizations. I tapped into like a interconnected web where everyone was connected. My heart opened and opened, and then other beings were there, and they all had different personalities, and some were cheeky and some were stern, and I had entered like this spirit realm, and nobody knew what to do with me. They were like, okay, what should we do with this baby? I was a baby. They were like, there's a baby here. What should we do with them? Oh, and they were quite like, oh, there's something, something had happened. And I went back to this like baby state, and it felt so familiar. I remembered the feelings, and I remembered it from being a child. I remembered all of that, and how, children are tapped into that, still. And so, yeah, that was really huge for me. And from then I continued to hold ceremonies in similar ways, but sometimes like in the woods. One time I took myself to Wales in the valleys. I was staying again in solitary spiritual retreat where I was sitting with the grandmother spirit regularly, and that was, working with vocal healing, and so, yeah, I would say like more times than I can count.
and so,
but never like sorry.
no, go ahead,
No,
go ahead. So during that experience,
okay, I was just gonna say never in a
you go, there's a bit of a
we
delay.
got a delay.
There you go. I'll give you the microphone. There you go.
Okay, I was just gonna say I've never sat in a big group with people, or facilitated by somebody else. So that's how I have sat. I have facilitated for others, but I have never been facilitated for. It's not something that is yet calling me. I feel as though if it's right, it will come up.
Outstanding. And ceremony. So why is ceremony important for you, G? For me, it's a very important process I do. For you, from your perspective, why is ceremony important? And for people out there who don't have any ceremonial time, why is ceremony important?
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you. So I feel as though ceremony is personal ceremony and then joint ceremony. So personal ceremony is very good for me personally because it gives me a sense of segment intention setting. If I'm going to sit down and eat my food, I will even just ceremonially bless the food, and then that's like, okay, that gives me a cue that I'm shifting out of whatever I was doing before, and I'm coming into this next part. And or like I feel like there can be several ceremonies in the day. I sit in ceremony several times in the day. Possibly I'm just always in and out of a ceremony all day long. But then there are bigger ones, with the moons, or if I'm bleeding, or if I actually want to release something or call something in with an actual purpose. And I feel as though they can be very empowering. They can help us to focus on what it is that we want, on what it is that we actually want to release. And on a very, taking it right back to a, very physical level, with our minds, and you know, reprogramming, that's a great tool to use alongside that, because it is, you know, it is empowering, and and it can help to create some really healthy patterns and habits, I feel, and at least it has for me. In terms of coming together in ceremony together, it is it's beautiful, because there is that sense of belonging and of a shared experience, of a shared journey, of creation, of creating something together. I absolutely love it, and I'm a really big believer that when we do come together in ceremony, we can actually change the world. We can actually send ripples out that affect reality. We can send healing out to beings who need healing. We can send energies out to situations that may need, you know, some kind of resolution or some kind of help, and and so yeah, it feels like an empowering tool, both personally and collectively, um, and I want to explore it more. I'm actually holding a ceremony on the 2nd of February, so that's in less than a week, and it's an online ceremony that I'll be holding from here, and it is free to attend. And so far we have around 80 people signed up, and this is definitely looking like it will be the largest, like, ceremony container that I will be co-creating with others. And even if, you know, not everybody shows up on that day, they have signed up to at least get the playback. And you know, because time is not linear, whenever they step into that ceremonial container, they are there with us. And so I am feeling excited to see what will happen when we all come together in such numbers, and you know, hopefully mass effect can be reached in some degree. And with the intentions and the potency of it, I feel like yeah, I feel like ceremony for me is like the way forward at this time.
And
One of the ways forward.
and that's great that you describe like the linear, non-linear, going into kind of like different no time fields. For me, ceremony has been an expression of how to disentangle from Roman numeral time altogether and not allow time to still affect us, because the Roman numeral time, say what your time's different than my time, we're on this social agreement, and this social agreement is, I'd say, the fraud timeline or the control timeline. And these moments of ceremony are important for us to go into a no time field. Like when you go into your ceremonial state, you're expressing a no time where you're not allowing to be ruled by the clocks anymore. You're not allowing what day it is, what time it is. You're going into that no time field. And for everyone, that's so important to experience that no time, because it gives us creation. And you're a very creative person with your music and so on and so forth. So that no time space can help a lot of people create and let go and realize the big truth of the universe.
Oh.
And so what's your future plans, and what are your future plans for the coming year? If you have any, you may have none. Just
Yeah, I have some.
same. I have some. I need to get on with a few more. I have a few. I need to have some more. I need to get on with that, really.
So yeah, so I want to continue to make some music and share that. It feels really important to, just feels like, you know, like choo, like that. So there are some songs that I'm working on currently, and that are energetically in the process and also in different stages of production. and making videos for them. I'm looking forward to that, really looking forward to that part of the process and the whole process of it, really. Photos and videos and all of that. Okay, so I've just launched my Ascension Medicine platform, which is a platform where it's very new. And the vision for it is that it grows as a platform where practitioners and people who have something to offer can offer and can share. And the vision is that there will be a huge resource of videos and courses and programs and workshops and retreats that are accessible through sliding scale pricing and so yeah, this is something that is really growing. I'm being guided towards it. I'm being guided towards different ways that people could interact with it as well. Coming together basically in co-creation with others massively, because I really feel like it's beyond what I can even imagine, like what we can create. It's just beyond it, and all I can do is offer my resources, my time and my energy, and see who resonates with that and see what we can create from that place. But yeah, that's exciting me at the moment, and so I'm creating videos. I would like to be sharing more videos that can inspire and be helpful and informative. Videos around how to do certain things, like different ceremonies for different desires and outcomes. For example, how to, like protect ourselves from, psychic attacks, or how to call in the things that we want, and different times of the month, and working with different planetary alignments. I want there to be a go-to video for anything that somebody needs help around. Like, like, okay, here are all of these resources and they're accessible, and that's it. And so that is I think those things will keep me busy.
Yeah.
I think those things will keep me quite busy for most of the year. But another thing that I'm calling in is community land projects. I don't know how that's going to come about, because I'm also trying to weave it into a new paradigm, and taking a bit of a risk in the sense of that I'm doing it the other way around. I'm going to try and go for this and then see what is birthed, rather than put all of my resources and energy into, at this moment, collectively coming together with others for land. I feel like it has to be the other way around for me at this point, but that is something that I'm calling in, and I would love to be able to be a part of creating a network of spaces where people can tap into and stay and offer and receive all over the place.
Outstanding. And so before we close the show, how can people get a hold of you? And I'd like to thank you for coming on the show. It's been real fun, and it's great to hear your story, really inspirational, and you've got a lot of great things coming your way. So it's an exceptional show. I've really enjoyed listening to you, and thank you for coming on. How can people get a hold of you, G?
Okay, so there are some ways. You can find me on Facebook, G Francois. That's G-E-E, Francois, like the French spelling. You can find me through the ascensionmedicine.org website. That's all one word, ascensionmedicine.org. And we have a Facebook page that is growing, a group, should I say, where there's also the page, Ascension Medicine page, which you can like and follow, or you can join our group, which is the Ascension Medicine group. It's just called Ascension Medicine, not group at the end. And yeah, like I said, it's growing, and this is a Facebook page where everyone is invited to offer and share their medicines, and so it's beautiful to witness it, people sharing their offerings, and stepping into that more and more, which is something I really celebrate and welcome always, everybody to step into that. So yeah, ascensionmedicine.org. G Francois.
If you can send me over everything, all your details, and even the event coming up, I'll pop it onto the link, and so all of the G's details will be on the description below. So all of it will be there for you. So amazing. Really, again, thank you so much for coming on, G, and I'll have you on again at some point, maybe the end of the year or something, and we'll catch up and see where you're at.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
This has been super fun. Thank you so much, G. Bless you. Bye-bye.
Blessings. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And my computer's gone a bit strange before I can close the... There we go. See you later. Bye-bye.